guys, welcome back to the Discipline Life Podcast, the place where we talk all about power differential relationships and domestic discipline. I'm Aria, and this is my husband, Coda.
Hello, everyone.
In this week's topic, we kind of teased in last week's episode. If you haven't seen last week's episode, or heard last week's episode, rather, definitely
go check it out.
Yeah, go check it out. And it was a good discussion. We kind of discussed how a wife's behavior is really the shared responsibility of herself and her husband. And because he holds her accountable, he ultimately is responsible for how he allows her to behave. And as we were kind of wrapping up that discussion, I brought up the point that a husband isn't always going to be physically around his wife, that there will be times where she has interactions socially or business-wise or other daily interactions where he's not physically present with her and cannot monitor her behavior for himself. And so I brought up the concept of a wife self-reporting her behavior, and we didn't have time to really delve into that topic completely on that podcast, and we really felt like it warranted its own discussion. And so that's what this week's topic is going to be about, is should a wife, or how should a wife, self-report her behavior when she has done something or had behavior that's unbecoming of her husband's leadership? How does she go about telling him? And how does he hold her accountable for things that he does not physically witness? So now that I've said all the words,
She got all the words in. It was good.
Why don't you start with your initial thoughts on this?
Yes, she should. Okay, and podcast's over. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it is very important for her to self-report. And the reason being is that we've talked a lot about on past podcasts, even last week's, about how important trust is in a relationship. And you have to be able to trust one another when both of you are not around each other. There are going to be those times, as Aria said, where you're not going to be with each other. She's going to be in her place. You're going to be in yours. You have to be able to trust her that if something happens or if she breaks the rules in some way, that she's going to come back and be honest about that with you. Because here's what happens. It doesn't, in anything in the relationship, if you don't self-report, or you self-report, you're not an honest, don't give an honest report. That's what I'm trying to say. There's dishonesty in that. Eventually, that's going to come to light. It just does. Those of you know, when you cover up a secret, eventually the secret does come out. It may take a while, but it eventually does come out. And so what you have to do is be honest, because even if it's just a little thing, that little tiny self-doubt, or that little tiny doubt that could happen, or that violation of trust that will happen because you didn't self-report honestly, really can hurt your relationship. And so you want to make sure that you are self-reporting and you're doing it honestly to keep trust, because it may seem ridiculous, but really even just a little lie can hurt trust and hurt the relationship.
I agree. I definitely think that self-reporting is something that should become a habit within a relationship, because it's something that becomes more of a habit the further you go along. I know that in the beginning there may have been some really confusion or just not a clear understanding of what I needed to be reporting to you and what I didn't. However, as time has gone along, I feel like there is a more clear understanding of what you want to know about. Yes. And I don't think that keeping things from your spouse, either intentionally or unintentionally, is a good habit to get into. I think that if we're being honest, like at this point in our relationship, I know how I'm expected to behave. I know what your expectations are. I know, you know, what I'm supposed to do, what I'm not supposed to do. And so I can have a better understanding of, you know, hey, this happened and you need to know about it. Because gone are the days where a husband is privy to information from other sources, right? Because it used to be like, you know, when people lived in smaller towns or they shopped at their neighborhood stores, if something happened, your neighbor might call and tell your husband.
That's true. That's true. I didn't even think about that, but that's true. That kind of happened back in those days.
It used to happen back in the day. Not so much anymore. I can't think of anyone really that would do such a thing. However, even if you're in company that you're like, oh, so-and-so is going to tell my husband that this happened, even if that's the case, you should tell him first.
Yes.
Because it feels like a worse violation to withhold the information than just coming out and being honest with it.
And you bring up a good point there. You just made me think of, if you withhold something, again, that little tiny thing that you think maybe is not that big a deal, it does become that bigger deal later. And you had just said that, like it becomes that problem that festers. And especially like what you just brought up about potentially somebody maybe knowing how your relationship is or just reporting what happened. Man, you don't want that person telling your husband first. Because that's just that's embarrassing, first of all.
Well, and I mean, let's say that your husband has rules and stipulations around spending habits. You don't want to wait until the credit card statement comes in or the bank statement comes in.
Yeah.
And he's reviewing it, and all of a sudden he realizes that you've overspent the budget in certain areas,
and that card is charged up, right?
And because then that becomes a much bigger issue, where if you would have just come out and told him, then he can deal with the discipline and you might be able to rectify some of those charges.
Yeah. And I think, and then you start having, what I was going to say, then you start having other problems from the standpoint that little issue then turns into an argument, potentially, turns into where more violations can happen. What I mean is then maybe potential disrespect happens and more it just then all of a sudden the snowball effect. That's what I'm trying to say. The snowball effect happens. It just starts rolling down the hill and it gets bigger and it gets worse.
And I would caution against arguing, not just because of the issues of disrespect, but in this type of relationship structure, there really is no reason to argue.
No, I agree. I'm just saying it could.
It could.
It could fester from that because of what has brought about that. But you're absolutely right. Like that's one reason we've been in a domestic discipline relationship, because it's cut down on that. I mean, I can't remember the last time we had an argument.
No, because I think finally when I helped you really understand, like, look, I might get defensive. I might get my feelings hurt. I might even be disrespectful. You don't need to get upset with me. You don't need to fuel that argument. We don't need to have that argument. You need to just cut it off and discipline accordingly.
Yeah. And so I think you're absolutely right that it shouldn't be there. But I just wanted to caution people that if one part of the trust is violated because of the scenario you just described or any similar scenario, all of a sudden it could just derail everything that you're doing.
And because of our domestic discipline relationship, I am so much better now than I used to be at accepting responsibility. I I used to be the type of person very much where I would deflect, or if there was any shared responsibility, I tried to push off as much responsibility onto that other person as possible, or I would downplay what happened. And so old habits die hard. That can still happen from time to time. However, I am so much better now at accepting responsibility, accepting where I need to improve.
That is true. Can I just interject for a minute? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to say that is absolutely true. If she's not just tooting her own horn here or bragging. That is absolutely true. I've seen her make huge improvements because of what has happened in the relationship. She's taken more responsibility. She's really grown as a person, as a wife, as a mom, and is not. I would say that there's a certain amount of anxiety that has left because of that.
That's true. But because I am more adept to taking responsibility for my actions and for my choices that I have control over, I am more likely to be able to recognize behavior that needs self-reporting, and more likely to be able to actually come to you and do that.
That's very true. That's very true. And so I guess what I would say also is that that has, because of that too, that has built more trust. That has built more closeness with us. And so all of those things, because of where it's been built, and back to what we were talking about there, that the one little thing that could get thrown in the middle of that could potentially derail all that if you weren't self-reporting.
Right. And so, yeah, because I think that if I were to do something and I don't tell you right away and you found out by some other means, not only are you finding out that I violated a rule, you've now found out that I intentionally kept that from you in some regard. You also might be embarrassed.
That's true. I didn't think about that. Embarrassment. That's true.
That my behavior reflected something, reflected your leadership in a way that was not a positive. So there's all these things that, and given that perfect storm of all of those emotions that a husband goes through when he realizes that his wife has violated a rule, has not come to him, has kept it from him, and this has gone on for, potentially weeks, if not longer. And now it's all coming to light and he's seeing like she got away with this and kept going on like nothing happened. And now I'm finding out about it. That's a much bigger issue.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, a cavity is easier to fill than a root canal.
Amen to that. Anybody who's a dentist in the house? No.
But all that to say, it's so much easier to take care of these things when they're small issues. It's also really, really good for the submissive partner, for the woman, to practice the humility that it takes to come and say, I made a mistake here. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are more likely to be more lenient if I come to you and admit a mistake.
Yeah, I really am, because you had the courage, you had the discipline, and more importantly, you had the trust to come to me, tell me the offense that was committed. And yes, I'm more likely to say, I'm still going to follow through with the punishment, but I may be a little bit more lenient because she did the right thing and didn't try to cover it up. Didn't try to say, oh, no, that's not a problem. I didn't actually violate the rules and come up with excuses, but came forward, did the right thing so that we could get it back on track. And so, yeah, absolutely.
So I think I want to let me pose this question first before we move on. Can you think of a scenario or a situation where a wife should not self-report a mistake that's happened? I know that's kind of a quandary.
That is a quandary. No, because who in a marriage relationship such as ours, and obviously this is the only one I have to go on, so we're going to use it as an example. This is the person that that's supposed to know you better than anybody. That if anybody's going to keep your deepest, darkest secrets hidden, it's your spouse, and vice versa. This should be a relationship that is a safe place to discard any type of garbage, to hash things out, to do anything. And so I don't think that by keeping anything away that you're helping. So no, I would say no. You should always, even if you think it's not a big deal.
I would have to agree with you as long as the relationship is healthy, and all of our advice is really only for healthy relationships where
We hope so.
where everybody's consenting, where everybody's participating of their free will, and there's trust, and there's just a good foundation of a healthy relationship. I can't think of a scenario where keeping something from your spouse intentionally or even unintentionally is a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for saying what you said, because I didn't mean to not include it. If your relationship is having some major issues, you have bigger issues right now than whether or not your spouse is keeping something from you.
I mean, and we always say if your relationship is not healthy, then you need to seek professional, licensed.
And that's not us, because we are not licensed. You definitely know I'm not licensed. So in that area,
well, and we can't provide any type of advice for major issues, right?
That's a no. Yeah, that's a definite no. So.
But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. There might be times where, if you feel unsafe or you feel like there's major issues going on, we definitely think pause the discipline, find the appropriate help and people in your real everyday life to walk through that with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So wait, did you have when you wanted us to segue into something?
Yeah, so I was going to say,
I lost my thought, so if I get it back,
that's okay. I was just going to say, since we've kind of established the importance of self-reporting, why we think that self-reporting is a practice that should become a habitual part of your domestic discipline relationship.
Not an option, in other words.
What are some ways that in systems to facilitate self-reporting?
Oh, pick me for 500.
Okay.
Well, first of all, we've talked a lot about it on our podcast before, but the obedience app that we use, I think, really helps, because what we're able to do is we're able to put some things in there to really help you self-report.
Do you consider that self-reporting, though? Because if a habit is not done, it automatically ticks off.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. I mean, I guess, okay, it's going to be semi-self-reporting.
I mean, yes, it's self-reporting from the standpoint of I have to be honest with how I track the habits.
That's true. I have to trust you in saying that you actually drank your water and you didn't just tick it off.
Right.
Right.
Because like we've said before, it's a tool. It's not a perfect tool. And where it's not perfect is I can just go in there first thing in the morning if I wanted to and check off all the habits. And
that's true.
Who knows how the day is going to
go.
True. And there has been at least once in the past where I've had to come to you and be like, hey, I've been clicking this off, but I haven't really been doing it the way it's supposed to be done.
Naughty, tisk, tisk, tisk. Well, then the next thing I'm going to go to, I didn't win the $1 million prize there. I think the next thing that I would go to probably is you've done journaling. And we use, I'm trying to remember the journaling app that we use.
It's called, I believe that it's called Penzu.
Penzu, that's what it is.
It's Penzu.
ZU, yes.
I
can't
really
ever
like.
remember how to say it.
I really like that one.
Shout out to the creators of Penzu.
Why I like it is because I like things that resemble real notebooks, just like line by line, just written notebooks. Where it's limited is it is not a digital scrapbook. There's other apps that allow you to do more of like a digital scrapbook. This isn't it. This is going to be more of like a traditional notebook style.
It's very simple. That's one reason I think why you like it, because like you said, it's almost like having a physical notebook where you write, but she can type in it.
Yeah.
But it has lines, and it looks like a real notebook, but it's very simple. It's just like pen to paper, basically.
And you just have to create a account, and so we are able to just log into the same account on both of our phones. I have it on my iPad as well, and then that way, no matter where I am, what device I have available to me, I can log in and add to my notebooks.
Yeah, and so that seems to be, in my opinion, one of the ways that she can self-report, because she has. I mean, she uses it as a journal that she allows me to read. This is a journal that I will check from time to time to see if she's put anything in it. But a lot of times she'll say, I put an entry in it that you're welcome to read, when you get to that point.
Well, and I would say that I'm sorry, excuse me.
It's okay. She's been suffering from allergies like I know many of you have.
And so I have several different notebooks. So one of my notebooks is more of a traditional journal style where it's, just my thoughts, my opinions, those things. You only read that one when I say, hey, I think I want you to know what's been on my mind lately.
Yeah, because I still want her to have privacy for her own thoughts and things. And so, again, that's something where I have trust that if there's something I do need to know, she'll put it in a different journal.
However, we do have a more of like a daily journal type of thing where that one is written specifically for you.
Right.
And so I just want to step through, because the system that I was going to cover is the journal.
Okay, good. I got it right on the second time, not the first time.
So the way we have structured this is, and we're not perfect at this because still establishing systems and creating habits.
Always. It's never done. It's never done.
But the way we do this is if I'm doing it correctly, I'll just go in daily, kind of make a few notes about notable things that happened that day. And, and then I will write in there, like, things I think went really well, how I succeeded, and then the things I feel like I failed or fell short in. And then I have one tab where it just kind of catalogs all of the small things that have happened. So, we have certain rules that are punished with spanking on the first offense. And then we have some rules that are not, that are more just daily habit rules, things like my water. I don't get spanked if I fall short in my water. However, it goes on that list of ways that I fell short this, like on Tuesday, I didn't drink all of my water. So that's going to go on that list. So that when we do our maintenance, if that list acquires more than just a few things throughout the week, there might be some additional, not a full punishment, but some additional steps to our maintenance to address those smaller infractions.
Yeah, and the smaller infractions, excuse me, doesn't always result in a spanking, like for drinking your water, not drinking your water.
I just said that.
So okay, I'm for the males who maybe didn't understand, like me. That's that version.
So yeah, so if I didn't drink my water on a Tuesday, then you may assign me some lines, or you may take away
a Dr. Pepper.
some something. Yeah, something. You may take something away, or you may have me write lines. There will be some sort of like non-physical consequence there. However, it will go on that list of ways that I fell short throughout the week. And then if that list grows to be 3, 4, 5 items long, then there may be some additional steps to our maintenance that would be physical to address those small
There
issues.
we go. Now I got it. Now we got what I was saying. But yes, I've said very well.
And that's the system that we're trying. I think that it has the potential to be really successful.
Yeah, it hasn't been...
It hasn't failed.
It hasn't not worked.
I was about to say it hasn't failed,
I mean,
and it hasn't not worked because of the system. It's just more of we need the time and attention to make it a consistent habit.
And by the way, I'm just going to bring this up. If that's not something that works for you, again, I know we say this a lot. You don't have to do that. We just want to, reiterate that you may have something else that works for you. If a physical journal works for you, that's fine too. We don't want to say that you have to use everything digital. We just happen to do that because I have a hard time with paper too. So,
and we do a journal system for a few reasons. Number one, our schedules are kind of crazy, and we're kind of, my schedule's not super crazy, but Coda's schedule is really crazy.
In fact, this is the most time I think we've seen each other so far this week.
And so
Oops.
I use the journal because, in particular, the digital journal, because he can check it wherever he's at. So if he has a few moments in between meetings or in between obligations, he can open it up, see what's going on. And we don't always get time to talk to each other, especially not when we want to. I can call him. He just might not be available to answer. And so that works for us in that regard. And then, also Coda has so many things going on. He's at school, he's at work. He manages a team at work, and then in school he has several classes with they're all their own assignments, and he has to memorize some things. So he has a lot going on in his brain. So if I were just to tell him oh, I didn't drink all my water today, and he gave me a consequence for that, and then the next day I'm like, oh, this happened, or I kind of overspent the budget here, or I kind of did this. He would, I'm sorry, guys, excuse my voice. He would not, at the end of the week when we get to that maintenance session, he would not remember the entire list in order to address it effectively in our maintenance.
That is a true statement right there.
So it works really well for him to have a list compiled that he can reference, so that he can then decide what needs to happen during that maintenance.
Yeah. So again, that may be you all may be in a similar situation, and so something like that might be able to really help you stay on task and also to communicate when you're not with each other, especially like the week that we had.
However, another system of self-reporting that could be beneficial to some couples is just to have that face-to-face conversation.
Yep. I have heard recently of if you don't want to do a typed journal or even a written out journal, you can use the voice recorder app and do an audio recording too. So if you're not able to have that face to face, but you want that the sound of that person's voice, and that's also another helpful thing that you can do as well.
Yeah, all iPhones will have a built-in voice recorder app.
I think Android has one, but I don't know what it is. So,
but if you can't find it, or if you don't like that one, there's so many free apps that offer that voice recording feature.
And so that could be another way. Not saying face to face is not a good idea. That's always probably the preference, even with us.
Well,
but
yes and no, because if you do face to face, you're still not going to have that compiled list unless you follow up.
That's true. So, but if you have that face-to-face, maybe still try to make some type of list that you're bringing into the conversation.
Or, some husbands are just have a more natural knack to keep track of things.
That is true. I don't know. I do not fit that category.
So it really play into your strengths, play into what works well for your relationship, and preferences, right? Some husbands may want that confession to be in person. You may even have some protocol around that time, Maybe if you have a time before bed where your wife kneels, then she can make any type of self-reporting confession at that point. Or so there's so many different ways to do it. It just depends on your family structure, what your schedule, what works well for you, what your preferences are. But for us, the digital journal really works, and for the reasons we listed.
Yeah, I really do like that system, and I hope it's going to continue to help us in that. I was just thinking, just in case some of you are like, well, we'd really like a free option. If you are an iPhone user, an iPad user, I was thinking that Apple Notes might be a good app to use.
Pinzu has a free version. You get one journal.
Yeah, you get one journal with that way. But I was thinking Apple Notes, you get multiple folders, I think, with notes in
but
them.
I'm just saying, if all you're doing is using it to do the daily.
Yeah. No, sure. Yeah. But if you need multiple and you're like, man, I don't want to be paying another app.
It's $20 a year. So
no, it's not. It's not bad. I'm just saying,
I think that if you do it monthly, that it ends up being significantly more. But I just did the yearly because that's what worked for us and for our budget at the time.
But just for a free alternative, if you have an iPhone or you have an iPad, Apple Notes might be a good substitute there.
Oh yeah, there's so many options. That's just the one that I found that I like the format of, but there's so many options because everyone prefers different things.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out because I know, especially our patrons, you do a great job supporting us and we appreciate it. So maybe the last thing you want is another paid app. Is there any free ones? I'm always the one going, is that a free app? I'd like the free one. So.
Where was I going? Oh, so all I was going to say to kind of follow that up is I think the biggest takeaway that I have is that honesty builds trust. And if you are keeping things from your husband because in order to avoid punishment or because you don't think it's a big deal, that's not going to build that trust. That's not being honest, because at the end of the day, as a wife, I don't get to decide what's a big deal.
Well said. Well said.
So it's my responsibility and my job is to bring the information to Coda so that he can decide how to move forward in our relationship with that information and how to respond accordingly.
I don't have anything to add. That was really good.
I was also going to say, I remembered what I actually was going to say, that when I say that we have additional steps to our maintenance, if something is, if I come to you and I confess something that is completely out of line, I haven't done this in years, but
no, I was going to say that's.
But no. Let's just say I came to you and self-reported that I, engaged in some road rage, for instance. That would probably be a spanking, I would assume.
Absolutely.
Again, that hasn't happened in years.
And just so that they know, she's not really a big road rage person.
No.
She really is not. I think I'm more prone to that than she is. But so that's something that's very out of character. But yeah, if it happened, yeah,
that would not go on to that list. Anything that's punished with a spanking does not go on to that list of minor infractions.
Correct.
And you don't have to do, we just decided that was something that really worked well for us, was to kind of have some follow-up for minor infractions throughout the week so that I wasn't continuously having just these little things kind of hold me back, and I could kind of have some additional accountability. You don't have to do that. If you're like, no, the writing lines, the early bedtime, the missing out on certain privileges, that is enough of a punishment. That's enough accountability. That's enough follow through. You can leave it at that. But I do still think that it's good to keep a master list so that you can kind of have some assessment of how did the week overall look. Okay, you had a hard day one day, but the rest of the week was good. That's a win, right? But if you had just one or two minor infractions every single day, then that's something that might need some more conscious effort to improve upon.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought all of that up because it's going to depend on your relationship, obviously. In Aria's case, if she had that same infraction every day, it would definitely be something that I deal with it either way, but I would deal with it differently than the one day out of an entire great week. You got to take the wins. And you also can't expect perfection. So you have to sometimes look and say, man, she did great 6 out of maybe the 7 days of the week. Maybe just cut her a break a little bit. But if it was the same infraction, everything else was good, but there was this one thing where it was the same infraction all 7 days, yeah, maybe you need to address that.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, that's going to depend how you've set up your relationship, and your spouse the best on what really is a big deal and what isn't in your domestic discipline,
and what works for you, right? Because there's some couples that they don't mess with non-physical punishments. It's like either you get a spanking or you get a warning, and if it's a small infraction, that might just be a talking to or a warning, and then if it continues, then it becomes a spanking, and that's it.
Right, exactly.
And they don't mess around with like writing lines and stuff like that. And so everyone's different. Everyone's going to structure their relationship different. I personally, I don't mind having those non-physical punishments in place because it does offer a level of accountability. However, if there is multiple small infractions throughout the week, I just came to Coda and I said, I could use some additional accountability. Can we incorporate some additional accountability into our maintenance sessions if I've just had a week where there's multiple small infractions? Because I'm always looking to improve. However, the master list really helps me too, because it helps me be able to see where I fell short, but it also helps me be able to see where I accomplished things, right? Because I tend to focus in and zero in on I didn't do this and I didn't do this and I didn't do this, and I don't give myself credit for, but I did do all these other things. Yeah, I may have fallen short here and there, but 95% of the time I was on it. And so it really helps me be able to have a better perspective of my own accomplishments, my own assessment, and where I really am.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you.
I was going to add something, then I thought, oh no, she covered it. So there we go. You don't need anything from the peanut gallery.
All right, guys, if you have enjoyed this episode of the podcast, please give this a like.
Yay.
If you are not already, please do consider subscribing and ring the notification bell to be notified when we upload new content. If you'd like early access to the podcast as well as bonus content, please consider subscribing to our Patreon. Links to that are in the description box.
And also, if you want it in video,
yes,
consider coming to Patreon.
We offer the podcast in video form to our patrons, as well as a bonus episode every week, or a post show every week after the podcast. So that's what we're going to go into now.
Before we do that, I just want to apologize to all the patrons for getting Coda's Corner out really late this month. It's been a little crazy. I'm going to try to do better in October.
And Coda's Corner is since you brought it up on the public podcast.
Sure.
It is a bonus solo podcast where Coda does about a 15-20 minute podcast by himself every month, and he gives that to the patrons.
And you have one as well.
I do.
For the patrons. So if that's something you're interested in, go over to Patreon.
All right, guys, we really enjoyed having you, and hopefully you liked this topic. We enjoyed talking about it.
See you in the post show.
Bye.